Yes, everyone, and welcome to our first edition of our podcast, the Tottenham Weekly, brought to you by the Irish Hotspur, brought to you by me, Jack, and Dave, the Irish Hotspur, that king of the Harris Army, everybody. This is our kind of podcast duo. It's just going to be us chatting about Spurs quite naturally. You could say a bit unprepared as well, because who knows, we might be cutting across each other, maybe getting really passionate about one subject or another. We kind of just came here with things that we just really want to chat about. It doesn't exactly have to be, transfer related or, scripted, in any way whatsoever. Just things that are sort of on our mind, things that, we actually just genuinely talk to each other almost over the phone, at times, Dave, for hours on end. And so we decided to basically just turn this into a podcast, those conversations we have.
Yeah, well, look, Jack, yesterday it was inspired by a 3 hour long conversation we had. Sorry, not yesterday, it was Sunday. A 3 hour long conversation we had, and, it just came to me. It's like, look, we cover so many topics, talking about it 3 hours on the phone. Let's get it down. Let's get it recorded and put it out there and see what people think.
Exactly. And so, everybody, if that sounds of interest to you, everybody, please stick around. It's called Tottenham Weekly. We're going to be putting it up on, various platforms, to where you find your podcast. And as well, of course, you can find it on YouTube. We are going to also clip it up, to make it maybe not, as kind of long in case you only have so much time, to watch it. We will be kind of editing it. So it is kind of something really new here to the Irish Hotspur. So everybody, if you do enjoy, feel free to smash that like button and feel free to share it with your friends, especially friends that do enjoy maybe that Tottenham kind of podcast community. But let's get started. Enough of, kind of the business end. Let's get into it. We're going to start with, a topic, Dave, that sort of, I've been kind of repeating on end here, and maybe I haven't gotten enough of a say on it. And it has to do with Sonny. And, we are going to be kind of speaking about probably a controversial kind of subject, which is, Sonny's, kind of recent form. His recent form is not what we know, he's capable of. This is a world-class player, probably maybe the best left winger alongside Mane, hands down, no competition necessary between those two for the last 4 or 5 years. Now that Mane has left, I think Sonny's easily the best left winger in the Premier League at this moment in time. Like I said before, and I'll emphasize it again, world-class winger. And it feels like he's not really playing to that sort of ability. And he's not even, close to even probably a 6 or a 7, kind of performance. He's kind of being, fallen below that for Spurs. His first touch has seemed a bit off. He is being probably asked to do a bit of a different role. I understand, he is dropping deeper instead of, kind of playing a bit higher up and wider, making those runs in behind, those well-timed runs that we know he's so good at. With Harry Kane, he's kind of being asked to do a lot more, almost kind of playing often even as number 10, the way that he'll try to drop deep, spin his defender, kind of get, an attack going, something that we know Kulusevski, of course, is very good at. But Sonny, at this moment in time for me, Dave, seems to be really struggling with it. And he looked good at it, towards the end of the back of last season. He even made Rob Holding get a red card, with dropping deep, being a nightmare for him. But he started off this campaign, not so well. And I'm starting to see, I'm going to get to kind of the point here. I'm starting to see, kind of those, sort of negative and, kind of, in my opinion, slightly toxic, kind of, criticisms of Sonny. I think you're welcome to say that Sonny is playing poor, but we're starting to verge on the territory of like, oh, he's, focused on something else, doesn't want to be, at Spurs, Richarlison is, maybe too much pressure on him, etc. And it's starting to verge on kind of a similar kind of unfair maybe criticism that I thought Harry Kane actually had received, last season. And Harry Kane eventually proved his doubters wrong and showed that he is a world-class player. I know Sonny's going to do the same thing, but I don't know what about you, Dave. It's starting
Look,
to creep on, kind of the similar Harry Kane vibes from last season with Sonny, if you ask me.
look, Jack, first of all, Sonny's not worried about Richarlison. Sonny's not worried about his position at Tottenham whatsoever, in fact. I mean, this is a guy that, look, last season probably dragged us through a lot of games on his own, scoring goals, setting up goals, making magnificent runs. You know what I mean? He's a golden boot winner. So let's put that straight. He's not worried about Richarlison. He's not worried about his place at Tottenham. Now, what sickens my whole, Jack, and what really annoys me about is, and it was the same with Harry Kane last season, when I sat there defending Harry Kane, and you know me, Jack, I would not budge an inch. And I heard it everywhere. Sell him, drop him, blah, 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 blah. We need to get into our heads at Tottenham Hotspur. You don't drop world-class players. You literally, world-class players, 9 times out of 10, you play them through their bit of patchy form. You play them through it. Dropping them, it's weird in a way, Jack, because you drop a world-class player, it affects his psyche. But if you put him out there and keep putting him out there, it doesn't affect his psyche, and eventually it'll come right for Sonny. Now, I do think Sonny is having a bit of an adaptation period where teams are not going to let him have a free run, like whereas maybe before they would have been more worried about Harry Kane, and Son had a lot more space to operate in. But because he's now punishing them, he's winning golden boots, and he's got the notoriety he's got. In their tactics now, it's like, look, as soon as Son gets the ball, get straight up behind him. And this is, I think, where Son is struggling, because before, Jack, is like last season, and I would even say especially at times this season, he's had chances running in behind Chelsea. There's one at Southampton. And he just hasn't made the most of them. And that's where Son's best chances have come. If you think about a lot of his golden boot winner, a lot of the goals on the way to his golden boot, we've seen it at West Ham last season, runs in behind and the ball going into him. This season, teams are operating against Son differently defensively. What they're doing is when Son gets his ball, rather than letting him get him turned and run at them, which is what they were doing before, Son will absolutely kill you by doing that. They now get very up close behind him, and they're constantly trying to push him away from the goals, have his back towards goals, push him back towards our back line, back towards our midfielder to eliminate his danger. And I think he's struggling right now physically wise, because a lot of these big guys coming right up behind Sonny, they fancy themselves to be able to dominate him physically and stuff like that. And you can see it. You know, they're getting right up behind Son. Son doesn't have time to get turned and get running. So a lot of his touches are loose, passes are loose, because he's under so much pressure.
It's almost like he's powerful when running, but, you know, if his back is, you know, to goal, he's probably not as strong, you could say. Maybe, you know, Jack, when he's actually running at you, Dave, when you try to, when Sonny's running at you, you know, he probably could take a challenge. You know, he could take a challenge easily. If his back is to goal and he's trying to hold somebody up or hold the ball up, it's kind of a different story.
Prime example. Remember his Puskas goal against Burnley?
Exactly, where just riding challenges.
That's Sonny. That's Sonny when he's running full flight. And then you look at Sonny against Chelsea, against Southampton this season. He's the one that ultimately lost the ball that led to their goals. And Chelsea's first goal and Southampton's only goal. He lost the ball in the build-up to both of them. And it is in a way punishing us. But like I said, he's world-class. You do not drop a world-class player. You play him through his purple patch, because at any given moment, he's going to be the one to pop up, beat two players, have that bit of magic and bend it in the top corner. Yeah. Like we seen last season, you don't drop these guys. I get people saying, what was the point of buying Richarlison? Richarlison is there to have a better option off the bench, which he's proved against Chelsea, against Wolves that weekend, running ball for you in the last 10 minutes when other players may be tired. That's what he's there to do. He's there to come in for a bit of rotation at times. Now, if you're rotating Sonny and taking him out because he's tired, that's a different story. But to hear this word dropped is disrespectful. Look what this guy has done in a Tottenham jersey. It was the same thing we've seen with Harry Kane. Drop him, sell him. He's not quick enough. He's this, he's that. It's like, no, he's still the same player. He's just going through a bad patch. Play him. And look,
in comparison, though, to an average player, you know, you would say, like, you know, an average player needs to be dropped because it's a different story, Dave. Like, they couldn't come in and, you know, say, well, he could score 2 goals, you know, he could get a hat trick. It's like, no, like, that's what you can only say, you know, when it comes to a world-class player like Sonny. That's why you don't drop him, is because it is true. Sonny could all of a sudden in a game just finally find, you know, his way again and could pull up with that 2 goals and assist, or pull up, you know, with a hat trick, you know, very easily. And you just, it's almost dangerous, you know, to drop him for that reason, because like you just said, Dave, it could just start in a second and you don't want to miss that chance.
No, you don't. And by dropping him, you put him in a negative zone. And look, Son doesn't need to be dropped. It's not like he doesn't have professional standards. It's not like he doesn't have the right people around him. Yeah. Like, you know, you don't drop players like that. If you know a player, and we've all seen Sensational documentary and stuff like that, we all know what Son is like in and around the training ground. We all know how his father is on top of every single move this kid makes to make sure he reaches the highest standard and gets the most out of his potential and out of himself before one day he does retire. Now, I can guarantee you, Jack, they have not changed from last season when he won the Golden Boot. If he's still operating at the highest standards and demanding the most out of himself week in, week out on the training pitch and stuff like that, that will replicate on the football pitch. It's when his standards are dropping. It's when his Training standards are dropping. He's going out doing more things after football that he was never doing before. His professionalism has dropped. That's when you give it. That's when you use the word dropped, and you give someone a kick up the hole and say, look, this can go two ways now. You can keep going the way you're going and end up like Dele Alli, or you can get yourself back on track and hit them professional standards you were at. And that's for me. That's why you don't use the word drop with Sonny, because you just know with Son's father around him, them standards have not dropped. It's just a bit of poor form at the minute, which may I add, he had them last season. He had that bit of poor form last season, but the difference was, Jack, Harry Kane wasn't scoring. So Son was defended a lot more through them poor periods. Now that Harry Kane is scoring, people are saying, oh, well, we've got Kane scoring, so drop Son. He needs to be dropped, blah, 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 blah. No.
But it was the opposite story last season, where Sonny in the beginning of the season, was absolutely on fire, carrying us through that Nuno period, was the only guy capable of scoring under Nuno and was able to sort of get us points that, we probably are very thankful for now, considering it in hindsight. And so it was the opposite story where Sonny was playing really well, was in fine form, almost world-class form. And Harry Kane, was just recovering from kind of the summer drama, as well as not really being in the best of shape. And, is the complete opposite story. And now we're seeing it, in this case with Harry Kane, coming into, starting off the season in fine form, kind of carrying us similarly, through some games, getting us the goals that we need to get these points that we will probably, in hindsight, at the end of this season, be very thankful for. And it's a very similar story, Dave. And that's kind of the reason I wanted to bring up, this whole point, in the beginning as the first thing I want to talk about. I see this as being parallel stories.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous, Jack. And just maybe to round it off, what concerns me, right, is you hear these things, drop Son. But in the same breath, you hear people going, oh, Davinson Sanchez has played 7.5 hours and kept clean sheets. But they won't talk about, they're against teams that you should be keeping clean sheets against teams that don't score, don't carry an attacking threat, and they haven't done it phenomenally. They've just got over the line. But then in the same thing, you're seeing round at the same time, drop Son. How does that make sense to anybody? You want to drop a player that has continuously put in performance after performance, year in, year out, has stood up in big Champions League games at times, stood up at big moments, won a golden boot last year, signed a new contract when others didn't want to, and we were going through the shit. And you're hearing drop him, but then you're hearing defensive players that have been here. By the way, it's 5 years for Davinson Sanchez Day. 5 years. Dyer, Davies, longer, who have always been backups, who have always been on the fringes of things. Never really had any real stand-up moments like this guy. Yeah. Yet you hear all the defense for them. And then you're hearing about Son, Højbjerg. You heard about Kane last year. Oh, drop. It just drives me absolutely insane. You want to talk about players who have stood up and been counted last 6, 7, 8 years, season in, season out, biggest moments, biggest games. And in the same breath, you hear people defending players that have just constantly been on the peripheries of the squad or have just never been at the standard of top of the. It just drives me absolutely psycho when I see it.
God, I mean, you guys, you have to treat your world-class players like royalty for a reason. I'll tell you that. But if anybody enjoyed that Sonny conversation, let us know and, tell us your thoughts in the comments. And, if you're listening on the podcast form, we're going to quickly move on because, wasting time. And I know you're enjoying yourself, probably enjoying this conversation. But we go on to something, that, of course, has to be in this podcast. And since I am sort of, running the podcast as the moment, I get to have, my floor time and I get to have my moments, to be the professional Emerson apologist, which I am, everybody. And when it comes to Emerson, I probably maybe didn't even consider myself, when he first came into this club, to be, a big Emerson fan. He really isn't, my, sort of player. But the reason I kind of became such a big apologist and, kind of defender of his is he just has the biggest target, on his back I've ever seen any transfer receive in my life. And genuinely, the time period in which we bought this guy was not a good period at all. We were, under the garden gnome of, Nuno Espirito Santo. You could basically say if you were being kind to him, you would call Nuno a B-Tech Mourinho kind of, manager. I would say Emerson at his worst is a B-Tech right back for, Jose Mourinho's side. So sort of actually the signing made sense. At the time, we were looking for a defensive right back, a guy that would not get burned, a guy that wouldn't concede penalties, guy that wouldn't make stupid fouls or wouldn't, basically just be a bonehead in the defensive areas of the pitch. Because when you do think about it, when you are a Premier League right back, I know we like to think that, most of the time they're just sitting on the ball, playing passes like Trent Alexander-Arnold, but we do really like to forget, it seems, often that you are coming up against the Raheem Sterlings. You are coming up, against the likes of, in this case, if, Sonny is our world-class player, you're coming up against really dangerous left wingers. Even in Arsenal, Martinelli, is a fabulous dribbler. You're coming up against St. Maximin, basically the best dribbler, in Europe. You have to remember these fullbacks are coming up against some of the best wingers in world football, guys that skin people for a living. And I think what Tottenham realized was like, we probably need to bring in a right back that can actually defend in the one-on-one moments. Because when you do look at Emerson compared to the likes of Doherty, compared to the likes in the past of Serge Aurier, which I don't think we want to, dwell on too much. And, other podcasts likes to say, arise Serge Aurier, if anybody even knows, because the guy was just so unreliable in situations when he was coming up against a really, kind of top class sort of winger. Serge Aurier could play well for 78 minutes, be absolute, top class. Then all of a sudden you just see him take two swipes at, somebody who he just got beat by in the penalty box, and he gives away a penalty and you lose the game. These are things that I've never seen Emerson do. And in fact, I'm going to probably get into, the reason why I'm actually apologizing, or, the reason why I actually do like Emerson is because, again, I'm emphasizing Emerson is defensively solid. The reason we brought him in was because he's a defensively solid right back. The target on his back, at least in my eyes, was so massive that people were then saying, oh, he's not even defensively good. He's not even defensively solid. And now just a year later, people are at least conventional wisdom, you could say, or at least for most people are now agreeing, yeah, he is defensively good. He is defensively solid. He's our best defensive right back. But it seemed like the target was so big. It seemed like the agenda against the guy was so massive that they were even willing to sort of kind of, forbid, using their eyes and actually watching the guy. They were willing to convince themselves that he was a horrible defender. Again, under a Nuno-like team, I still even thought under Nuno, he didn't even really look as bad as, anyone else. In fact, there are a lot of moments where I thought he actually covered himself as like clearly a competent defensive right back. Since under Conte, he's been playing in the biggest matches against the biggest wingers and has been able to shut him down. And before, I let Dave into this, and I'm going to have plenty more to, say on Emerson, don't get me wrong. But, he's been used in the biggest games by Conte, whereas I know Doherty is always famed for those 6 games in which, he played, don't get me wrong, sensationally, 8s out of 10s, 9s out of 10s, from Doherty in those 6 games. Those 6 games, none of them were against the big teams like Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, etc. Emerson is the one that is being used in those games by Antonio Conte, not because he's just a defensively solid right back. It's not just because that. It's because Conte knows he can work with Emerson, he can improve Emerson, and he likes the fact that Emerson has that strong, solid defensive foundation to work with. Whereas someone like Doherty, who's already 31 years old, 30 years old, he can't teach to become a good defender. It's too late for him to become a good defender, Doherty, where he sees Emerson. He's like, you know what? I can work with this. And last little point here, Conte is so famous for that. Like taking a player who's almost sort of excellent or sort of, just at least solid in one little attribute, and then he just exploits out that in the best possible way. He's not like a Pep, or a Guardiola, where he needs like the most technically, perfect players in every single position. He can use somebody if that person excels or if that person's incredible or just solid in a certain attribute. He knows how to work with that. He knows how to get the best out of that player. And the fact that Emerson is still so young, again, he has time on his side to get better in these areas. And I feel like people sometimes feel like Doherty is the one that's going to improve. It's like, it's too late for Doherty. Doherty's 30 years old, turning 31, fresh off a big injury. Emerson is still 22, 23 years old. He has so much time on his side. They act like Emerson is the finished product in my eyes as well, which I think is also unfair.
I've just got to come in here, Jack. I mean, look, anyone that criticizes Emerson, simple solution. Bring back Serge Aurier, put him at right back. It won't be long about crying to say, please put Emerson back in. Look, I've never seen a right back or a right wing back in my lifetime be closely analysed as Emerson has been. People gave Serge Aurier a free pass time and time again. Oh, you give away the free kick that City scored from in the cup final? No problem. Free pass. Oh, you walk out at the team halftime against Liverpool? No problem. Free pass. I've seen it time and time again with this guy. You make mistakes against Leicester? No problem. Free pass. And I'm sitting there, and the only one that ever closely analysed the guy is me, Jack. Everyone else gave him a free pass because, look, credit to the guy. He played when his brother died. Fine, credit to the guy. Great thing to do. But people go on like Serge Aurier as well, was this all-in-becoming right-back who could get down the wing and play a bit of football, could pass, could cross, could shoot, could score. No. Most of the times you're sitting there pulling your hair out because you can't complete a 5-yard pass. But everyone gives him free passes on that. We got rid of him. We bring in Emerson. Where do we go from, Jack? Europa Conference League to Champions League. Who's had a bigger impact on this club since Aurier's gone? Matt Doherty or Emerson? Emerson has. People give Matt Doherty a free pass as well. Oh, he had 6 good games. It's a 38 fucking game season and more. If you want to go into Europe and other cups, it's a 50-odd game a season. People give Doherty a free pass for him getting absolutely ruined against Arsenal last season. Ruined in under Jose Mourinho, in some of the big games he's played. Well, not even big games. To him, they're probably big games. Dynamo Zagreb, little cup teams from Division 2, Division 3. And we're getting knocked out against them. But yet, let's keep giving Doherty a free pass. I'm sorry, but I cannot see. I can, because everyone's entitled to their opinion. But please don't talk to me about Matt Doherty. I watch him more than anybody. I have to put up with this guy on international duty. I have to put up with this guy more than anybody else does. Look, he's nowhere near as good people make him out to be. I have people coming to me, oh, Dave, Doherty's better than what you say. He played well against Cristiano Ronaldo for Portugal.
You watched that game?
For 89 minutes. I sat there watching it. 89 minutes, he was okay. I couldn't believe it. But Ronaldo still went on and scored 2 goals off him. But no one will talk about that last 2 minutes. For me, Jack, the game is from the first whistle to the final whistle. Not 70 minutes, not 89 minutes, not 92 minutes.
You've also seen him, Dave, struggle to even defend, a winger from Azerbaijan or Armenia. You've seen him play, Armenia or Azerbaijan and see him struggle.
I've seen him.
He had a good game against Ronaldo. It's what the point I'm trying to say here, Dave. You've watched more football from Doherty. You have had to watch more football with Doherty than probably even most players in general, like that you actually have to watch. Like, you were practically prisoner to watching Doherty more than any other Spurs fan, I would say.
Of course I am, Jack. I watch all the Ireland internationals. Look, half of the Ireland people don't even watch the internationals anymore. They're that bad. But I sit there and put myself through the pain. I watch it all the time, every single game. Friendly game, doesn't matter. I watch the under-21s. I watch all the, underage groups and that where I can. I'm very passionate about my country. And what I will say to people, Doherty is nowhere near the player that he was at Wolves and that we signed. He's nowhere near it. At Wolves, he was decent. He was allowed to get forward, get in the box. And what Doherty was really good at was getting in the box when the ball was out the other side and getting on the end of things. Mm-hmm. At Tottenham, we're asking him to be the creator. Now, the reason why Emerson, in my opinion, plays over Doherty, let's take yourself back to Burnley, Brentford, games like that at the back end of last season. Biggest criticism of our wing-backs. And others in other games as well, even games that Doherty was playing before that. They will not take on their opponent. They will not knock the ball by them. And that's why Emerson's in the team. I see Emerson countless of times trying to beat his man. That's why he
famous step over.
Yeah. That's why he probably loses the ball a bit more than Doherty, because he takes a bit more risk, in my opinion. But people give out about Emerson's passing. It's much better than Matt Doherty's. How many times have I sat there, watched Matt Doherty? He has the one move, and it's so readable. So readable. I see it in international duty. I see it at Tottenham all the time. He looks to pass it inside to a midfielder and go again on the outside. He cannot skin his man. And guess what? When he passes that ball inside, 9 times out of 10, he loses it because he cannot pass. Emerson is a much better wing-back than what Matt Doherty ever will be. Matt Doherty is atrocious defensively. Absolutely atrocious defensively. I've seen this guy be under no pressure against West Ham and put it out for a corner kick. He's just an absolute bucket of nerves. Emerson comes in here. We go from Europa Conference League into Champions League. He's had more of an impact than Matt Doherty. He's more defensively sound than Serge Aurier. And people need to realize why we bought him here in the first place. Emerson would not be here if when we bought Doherty, he came in and he'd done his job defensively. Emerson would not be here if Serge Aurier was as great as people used to make him out to be. I think Emerson gets an unfair rep completely, and I think he's the most analysed right back I've ever seen in my life at Tottenham compared to others.
And also, final points here, I think, on Emerson that I want
I've hit a home run, Jack. There's no point.
The summary is simply for me is that when it comes to Emerson is that everybody also was saying, oh, he's going to leave. There's he's the first one on the team sheet, that Conte hates. Everybody's sending him, saying, he's going to leave. Every media outlet was saying he's going to leave. Every fan, was saying he's going to leave. And then this guy in the training videos, he seems to be in every single picture. Seems to be almost in these videos more than Sonny is. I mean, we're in Korea. Why is he in the videos more than Sonny is? Why is he smiling with Dyer? Why is he laughing with Romero? What's going on here? And then as well, you see him start the first 3 games of the Premier League season over Doherty. By the 3rd game, Doherty is probably fit. So it doesn't even at this stage make sense, Dave. It's almost like the target on his back, the original point of this, to summarize, the target on his back, I think, has been bigger than most incoming transfers I've ever seen. And the target on his back is so big that they genuinely were willing to think that this guy wasn't even going to start the first 3 games of the season.
No, and not only that, Jack, you missed the crucial point. Pre-season, Emerson played right wing back every single game that he was selected for. Where did Matt Doherty play? Left wing back. Left wing back. Then you have to ask yourself, why does Emerson play right wing back and Doherty's only playing left wing back pre-season? Why? Because Emerson is our number 1 choice. Emerson has more effect on this team than any of the other right backs we've had in. I would even go back maybe since Kieran Trippier or maybe Kyle Walker. But since then, progressively, we've got worse and worse and worse. Serge Aurier, Matt Doherty, not good enough. And like I said, Emerson wouldn't have been brought into this club if them 2 guys done their job. Serge Aurier wouldn't have got his contract rigged up. People give Matt Doherty a free pass. He's turned up for 6 games over the 2 years he's been here. He's 31. No improvement in him. Emerson will improve. Am I going to sit here and say Emerson is the most wonderful technically? No, I'm not going to sit here and do that. I see his flaws. But you have to remember, he was brought in here because he's defensively more better than Serge Aurier and Matt Doherty. The amount of goals we used to ship down that side when them 2 were there competing for spots and stuff like that. And it's a lot of that has stopped since Emerson's come in. Now, I get, Antonio Conte does like his wing backs to go forward and stuff. But Emerson does get forward. He creates overlaps for Kulu a lot of the time. What he does is he gets down to the byline. And if you watch it, he pulls it back. Kulu's sitting there waiting to cut in on his left foot and pulls it back to him. Emerson, he can't skin players. He's been a lot more creative in these bar maybe you would say the Chelsea game. Wolves and Southampton, he was creating. He's getting down there. He's getting in there. He's causing problems in the opposition box. And you've got to give the credit where credit is due. But we can work on him technically. Doherty's gone past that age where you can teach him to pass a ball 5 yards inside and actually reach a guy in the same colour shirt as him. He's gone past that point. He's 31. He's declining. He's not going to get any better. Give Emerson time. He's had more of an impact than Serge Aurier and Matt Doherty, and he's part of the reason why we're playing Champions League, because defensively, he's shorted up. Simple.
He also seems to be a dressing room favorite, kind of like Sonny. Like, he's very popular. It's almost like I bet everybody wants to go to Emerson's house, like everybody wants to go to Sonny's house by the looks of things. On top of that, as well with Emerson is that I just feel like, he just seems to be, a nice guy, by the looks of things. He just never seems to be a distraction, doesn't really, running the poker, like Joe Hart was, sort of nice guy, just seems to be motivated, kind of focused like everybody else, but, clearly not a distraction sort of personality, just wants to get along with everybody, have a good time, and, be just kind of a dependable person, and seems to be able to take a joke. I can tell he's kind of a bit of, somebody that they make fun of, and he seems to take it well, receive it well. By the looks of things, he's even a top class human being, just from the outside, I can tell.
He's a massive part of that dressing room. You can see that. But I'll end this, or I'll probably round it up on my end, Jack. And I'll just say, you could complain, critique, analyze his game all you want. There's nothing you can do about it. Conte loves him, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, he's here to stay. But this one is going to be kind of yours, Dave, that, I would say you were kind of a bit maybe ahead of the I don't know if ahead of the curve is the right, terminology, but I am going to use it. What kind of Sessegnon? Like you were kind of, I think, telling me that Sessegnon, you're a bit maybe worried about going into the season. And, we weren't really the biggest fans of his, last season, despite his huge improvement. Don't get me wrong. We just were a bit skeptical, I think, of his technical, sort of ability and his ability going forward. Kind of proved us wrong, it looked like, in that Southampton game. But what are your thoughts maybe about Sessegnon? This is kind of something you wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, look, for me, I made a statement at the start of the season saying I don't think Sessegnon is good enough to be at Tottenham, and I don't think he'll cut it here long term. Now, look, you would argue against Southampton, you probably proved me wrong. But we all know Southampton ship a lot of goals. We know that. It's their biggest problem. They ship an awful lot of goals. We've seen us destroy Southampton side with Kyle Walker-Peters there time and time again over the seasons. We've done it with Sonny under Jose. He got 4 goals off him. We know against Southampton, there's always a lot of space there down that side. And Sessegnon was probably the beneficiary of that, Jack. But here's my worry. You go against Chelsea. He got destroyed defensively, which is nothing I could ever really throw at him before. But he was just so pedestrian on the football. It's absolutely unbelievable. And I think with Perisic coming in here, Jack, within a game and whatever he came off the bench against Chelsea for, he's completely highlighted all of Sessegnon's deficiencies very, very, very quickly. Then you look at the signing of Destiny Doherty coming in. Again, youngster, 19 years of age. Was that signing to put pressure on Sessegnon to develop? He's 22 now, going into 23. He's kind of coming out of that kid period, that development stage, and he's kind of going to simmer out to be the level he's at. Was that signing to come in here and give Sessegnon one last push to prove he's good enough? Or is it a long-term replacement for Perisic? I think it could be a bit of both, if I'm being honest, Jack. Look, with Perisic, how fit he is, age is only a number to that guy. I still believe, even after next season, you probably get another year, another 2 years out of that guy if you really wanted to. And with Sessegnon, like this is the thing. If we get an injury to Perisic and we end up saying play a tough run of games where you could play Arsenal, West Ham away, Champions League game, Man City, teams like that, that's where it becomes a problem. And your injuries don't ever happen, very rarely, when you can accept them to happen. They often happen when you don't need them to happen. And this is my problem. And I understand we were never going to be able to do absolutely everything in one window. And I'm very happy with the window we have had. And I think Sessegnon is probably being kept because he offers, like, his output has been the same as Reguilon's. And Reguilon's getting on now. He's 25, 26. He's not a kid anymore. He's getting on. So when you look at it, he's younger. He's got just as good, if not more, output than Reguilon. That's why he stayed here. But this has to be a really big season from him. If he does get his shot again, he has to show that he can do consistently. He can't be up here against Southampton and down here against Chelsea. You ask any manager in football, they would rather you just be consistent. Rather than be a 10 one week and a 5 the next week, they'd rather you just be a consistent 7 every single week. And that's where Sessegnon struggles. And I also argue, has he progressed from his time in playing the Premier League at Fulham? I thought he was better at Fulham playing in the Premier League than what he is now at this age. I don't see the progression there. I get he's been unlucky with injuries and he is trying to work on that, and credit to the kid. Credit. He is trying to do extra things, to strengthen muscles in around his injury and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's all well and good doing the right things, but it's on the football pitch where it matters, and I'm concerned about his inconsistent performances.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, a theory that you and I have had maybe since, he started featuring a lot, under Antonio Conte. And, to be fair to him, though, he has similar attributes, I think, to Emerson. But, I don't want to get back into that. But again, speaks to the target on Emerson's back. I've never really seen people compare Sessegnon to Emerson. I actually think they're kind of similar players. Sessegnon really good in one-on-one defensive, kind of moments like Emerson is. kind of has that strength as well, to be able to hold off players. Not bad at the back post, as well, being able to, ward off, crosses and whatnot, but sort of struggles as well, kind of going forward, sort of struggles, technically, in certain moments going forward. But like you were kind of saying with Sessegnon, he's been around, for so long, and we paid a hefty fee for him, originally too. You have to, take that, into consideration. Whereas,
similar
and
to
he's
what
been
we
here.
did for Emerson. I know.
Yeah.
Right? I'm wrong.
We paid, I think, I think we paid less for Emerson, in fact. And Emerson, has sort of been, again, unfair to say, but, consistently available, where Sessegnon hasn't been consistently available, to prove maybe his worth for Spurs. I think right now I'm not really as worried as maybe David is, but like I said, this is something that David wanted to talk about. And, it is probably something that could be on your radar if you are listening, to this right now. When, Sessegnon, like you, maybe the emphasis here is he looked like an exceptional, option as a left wing back during his days at Fulham. Since then, it's sort of like maybe he's switched as a player, like he's become a bit more like a left back, if anything, more kind of defensively solid, not as great going forward. He seems to be in the right positions, he knows how to get in the right areas, kind of like with that attacking instinct, but it's those sort of, kind of final product, in those areas. He seems to struggle to have, I would say, a good delivery with his, opposite foot, because weirdly, Dave, for me, he likes to come in, on that right foot, and then he goes for those kind of right-footed, kind of deliveries that kind of are always a bit off to me, or they look awkward.
Yeah.
He's not as quick on the ball, you could say, or is like, dynamic on the ball with either one-touch passing or being able to take it past his man as well. It's just maybe certain moments of Sessegnon, in the final thirds that are a bit concerning, and I, of course, say the same thing with Emerson. Absolutely. But the issue, I think, is that Sessegnon has been here a very long time. He is, has a bit more pressure, with the likes of Perisic and Udogie, coming through as well. Whereas Emerson, like David, emphasized plenty before. And again, we don't want to get back into it, but Emerson sort of kind of nailed that spot down, whether you kind of like it or not, and Sessegnon, maybe he might not really nail that spot down as much as we probably expect him to.
No, I don't think so. Look, even last season, he was wrangling with Reguilon for large parts of the season and ended up getting their run in, from maybe around February,
But that
March
was
on.
impressive, to be fair to him, because I rated Reguilon. I was kind of a fan of Reguilon. I liked his attitude, and I liked, his ability to get up and down the pitch. I thought he was just exceptional at how much distance Reguilon could cover. But, he did win out over Reguilon, which was impressive, to be fair to him.
No, he did, and fair play to the kid. But look, Perisic is coming in. Look, we all know Perisic is world class, but when you look at the levels Perisic are at compared to Sessegnon, does Sessegnon have that potential? Can Sessegnon play on both feet? And I know people are going to tell me about the offside goal against Southampton, but that's one of how many times he's tried stuff on his right foot. We've seen it last season. The defenders know he's left-footed. They know he's very one-footed. So what they do is they get tight to him when he runs down the left, and usually he misses out physically and loses out physically. And then when he tries to chop back on his right foot, they let him because they know he can't kick it. You've seen crosses being overhit towards the back post, nowhere near the target. Now, although with injuries and stuff like that and everything else, there's still no reason why he why he shouldn't be two-footed, why he hasn't worked on that right foot. You look at Perisic, he offers the long throw-ins, he can take corners, he can take free kicks. All you need to give Perisic is half a yard to put a ball in. Is Sessegnon going to reach that level at Tottenham Hotspur? I don't see it, Jack. I really do not see him getting to that level.
And that's why you wanted to, bring this up, today, Dave. And I think it's, a good topic, to bring up. And again, everybody, let us know what you think if you're watching this on YouTube and, in the podcast. Like I said before, we'll move on, quickly into the next one because, we have one last, sort of topic to bring up here. And it is sort of, I don't know if it's our favorite topic, to talk about because we just love, defending this guy and, showing this guy some praise. And it's more we're doing the defense, against, maybe the the attacking raids, of, I would say disrespect is maybe the word that you could probably, acutely, attribute to this. And it's Højbjerg, Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg. I feel like this guy, Dave, I don't know what he's done, to the fan base, maybe, I don't know, he's taking a shit on their lawn or something like that. And, they just don't really like the cut of his jib. I'm not really sure, but they just seem to really have a big target as well. Maybe, the things that the things I've wanted to talk about today are people who I think have unnecessary targets on their back.
Just quickly, Jack. Simple answer. Let's roll Brock, Dele Alli, Lo Celso, Endon, Bele, Harry Winks. Simple answer to these problems.
Simple answer.
People are very quick to forget what we were used to watching. Very, very quick.
In Højbjerg, for me, and I want to kind of let you in kind of quickly here, Dave, and maybe I'll start you off with this, is Højbjerg was brought in that Jose Mourinho season where he did get sacked, but he was brought in as a Jose signing. And, if we did not sign Højbjerg, was going to be, the replacement for, you could say, I'm not sure who, because we didn't really have a ball-winning midfielder at the time. I guess you could consider Sissoko might have been, but is that really, realistic? We were looking for an excellent ball-winning midfielder, and I think people kind of forget the original role that Højbjerg was kind of brought in for. He's brought in under Jose to have an elite ball-winning midfielder who also has an elite winning leadership and, mental kind of strength and fortitude that's necessary to play for a Jose-like team. You could say even, if you were to go back in time, probably even before my time, but I think this is, an accurate, kind of similarity or kind of, connection here. He basically, Jose was looking for a Roy Keane, in his midfield. And Højbjerg was signed sort of, at the time for Jose as a Roy Keane sort of like player, a guy that isn't exactly, of course, Glenn Hoddle, in the midfield when it comes to technical ability, but isn't, Dave, by any means, poor technically. In fact, he's actually quite, solid and, is able to hold his own, you could say with most teams, technically. But what he's brought in for is being an elite ball-winning midfielder. People like to criticize Højbjerg in my eyes as, they criticize him for not, being able to play a hero pass or, a 30-yard ball over the top, any which moment. They think he's supposed to be like Thiago or, things like that with the way he's supposed to play. They forget that every team needs a ball-winning midfielder. And Højbjerg, the reason he was brought into this team was because at that time, he was one of the best.
Again, Jack, I have problems here. It's like, we've heard Spurs fans, and this isn't a dig at anybody, but like we've heard Spurs fans before and they're jumping around singing, oh, Bobo Sissoko, you know what I mean? And then they're sitting there ripping Højbjerg a new one week in, week out. Bobo Sissoko, he was supposed to be the ball winner in that team. Now, give it credit. He could go around and win that ball. But the ball would also bounce off him like it's a concrete wall. He'd win it and it'd go like 40 yards away from him. He could not get the ball under control. Could not shoot. Basically, let's remember this. When Sissoko shoot, someone up in the stands behind the goals, before he's standing there with their arms open waiting to receive it, Jack. Every single time, way over the bar.
Almost like, can I have your shirt, Sissoko? Can I have your shot? Is basically what they were asking for. Can I have your match ball?
I just don't get it. Like, Højbjerg comes in, he can win balls, he can control the football, and he can pass a football. Anyone that says he can't pass a football, go back, watch his second half display against Wolves. Go back, watch his second half display against Chelsea. Go back and watch a lot of the games he played last season.
Look at his game against Man United. His game against Man United, he was the best player on the pitch that day. Best player in the pitch.
He was the one that played the ball over the top for the opening goal against Norwich. Leeds, the ball he played over the top to Harry Kane. Last year, he finished 9th in the Premier League in passes behind teams like City and behind players like from City, Liverpool, who notoriously dominate the football. We have to remember we spent up until February surrendering the football purely because we had Harry Winks in the midfield and we could not get a grip. Now,
where does the narrative, Dave, that he can't pass come from? Like, where do you think that narrative comes from with Højbjerg? Because that's where it seems like it's deeply unfair. It's like he's not Thiago level of passing ability, of course, but like they're basically saying he's, horrible.
He's one of these players that is just a scapegoat. Look, I see it all the time. Tottenham aren't playing well first half. And by the way, you're talking 11 players out there not playing well. But I see the same names repeatedly all the time. Get Emerson off. Get Højbjerg off. Take Kane off. Substitute Sonny. He's playing crap. Blah, 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 blah. No one wants to talk about how bad atrociously we are coming out from the ball. Everyone says, no, Højbjerg's not good enough. He doesn't come looking for the ball. Our defense is so slow on that football. The opposition team literally just push right up. They go man for man, mark our wing backs, mark our 3-4 players, and mark the 2 midfielders. If our defenders were any good on the ball, Højbjerg would be able to sit in the middle of that midfield, create an angle, and receive the ball. but he doesn't. He has to come right back to the back line and take it right off Eric Dyer. A lot of times I've seen it against Wolves. I've seen it against Chelsea. It's like, that's not his fault. That's the defense's fault because they cannot get the ball into him. They take too long to get the ball under control. People were blaming Højbjerg against Wolves. It was Dyer, Davies, and Sanchez trying to play over the top balls and giving it straight back to Wolves. Now, you don't think Højbjerg's going to go mad and be like, for fuck's sake, boys, now I have to go back and win this back yet again. This is a guy that has been trusted since he's got here under Jose Mourinho. He's played nearly every game last season under Antonio Conte, bar 2. He played 36 out of the 38 Premier League games. Anytime managers over the last few years have tried to put out other individuals around with shit attitudes and just not at the technical quality Tottenham have been at, who's been more often than not the first player called off the bench, even though he's supposed to be rested, it's been Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg. And that's the thing. He can get shots on goals. He can keep them on target. They don't always go in, but at least he keeps them on the target. Much better than Moussa Sissoko. Can control a ball. He can pass a football, which people don't give him credit for. Against Brighton last season, Jack, everyone was ridiculing the wing-backs, Kane, Son. We're not creating. Who created our best 2 chances of that game? Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg. People don't, in my opinion, do not analyze this guy's game fairly. They actually even forget the reason why we brought him in here, because we had all these attacking, creative, poncy feet midfielders that so many people want. People will say, oh, but I play FIFA. I put 2 creative midfielders in my centre midfield and I win a game. I win every single game. I create, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but what they won't tell you, Jack, is, oh, I'm also playing on amateur level or semi-pro. I'm not playing on ultimate. I'm not playing on world class. You know what I mean? And of course, you're going to be people underestimate the ball winning side of the game. Look back over some of the best teams to win a Premier League down the years. And I don't like giving these guys credit. Patrick Vieira for Arsenal, Roy Keane for Man United, and N'Golo Kante or Claude Makelele for Chelsea since their rise. You know, you have Rodri or for Fernandinho for Man City. You have Fabinho in there for Liverpool. You go to Real Madrid, they've had Casemiro down the years. Bayern Munich, they've got Leon Goretzka. PSG, they have Paredes or someone else that can do it. You know, and this is my point. A midfield is about a partnership and a balance. You have to have one animal, one ball playing midfielder who can do all the technical stuff well. The whole idea of having him in there, he wins the ball and gives it to the other players that are putting around him who are responsible for playing. The other player you have in there is like when you go back through the teams, United have postcodes, someone that can get on the ball, spray passes, big passes. You know, Real Madrid, they have Luka Modric doing it. You look at Bayern Munich, they have a number of players doing it down the years.
They had Thiago, and then, you know, Kimmich was the ball winner, you know, at Bayern Munich, and he was the one that was cleaning up for them. And in fact, Dave, I think what people forget is they look at Luka Modric and they're like, you know, world-class midfielder, which he obviously is. But they seem to forget about the ball-winning midfielder right next to them that's defending and being able to clean up everything for them so that Luka Modric can get the ball as much as he can. And that player actually, Dave, you know, has moved, you know, to Manchester United. Casemiro is who I'm referring to. And a lot of people have even disrespected Casemiro. A lot of people have said, you know, this guy really isn't actually that good. He was kind of just lucky to be in that team. I'm like, please tell me that this guy isn't. He won 5 Champions Leagues as one of the best ball-winning midfielders in the Champions League competition. The guy is exceptional shithouse as well. And just, you know, to get back to Højbjerg, but yeah, David, I know you're going to get your point, but to get back to Højbjerg quickly, they did, you know, maybe Real Madrid supposedly interested in Højbjerg. He can't be that bad if, you know, they're going to replace Casemiro with Højbjerg.
No, not at all. Real Madrid don't come in for a bad central midfielder. They just do not do it. It's not in their ilk. Forever, I remember Real Madrid have had the best midfielders across world football that complement each other. One great defensive midfielder, one great ball-playing midfielder. Always. And the thing is, people say, why did Casemiro go to Manchester United? What has been Man United's problem? Fred and McTominay. McTominay was in their academy in a centre attacking midfielder. He's been converted to a holding midfielder. Fred, people have been screaming out for a centre midfielder at United that can win possession, turn ball over. Because anytime people play against United, they're straight in on their goal all the time because they don't have that player. That's why they bought in Casemiro. And it highlights, for me, the need for one in every midfield. Like I've gone through all the clubs, named all the teams, all the Premier League winners down the years. They all have had one. Even that great Barcelona team, they had Xavi and Iniesta in midfield. Who did they have cleaning up? Sergio Busquets. Even they had one. And they were one of the most best teams on the eye. And evident of what I mean by someone like Højbjerg on the team. People don't want to mention this. Dyer and Sanchez both missed a tackle, and Højbjerg took a yellow card for the team. And if he didn't take that, he was clean through on our goals and we're probably 1-0 down. And it's a different story. We're sitting there ridiculing Sanchez, sitting there ridiculing Dyer. And the reason why we're not is because of someone like Højbjerg. He helps out other people. He makes up for their errors. He's always first in, last out in the training ground. He's a part of the leadership group at Tottenham Hotspur. If you look at any player who opens his mouth on the pitch, it's Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg. Now, credit to Perisic. You see him doing that a lot, even when he's on the bench since he's come here. But it's usually Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg. He is so underrated at Tottenham Hotspur. Look, he can't be that bad if he plays every game for club and country. And you look at his country, not the most gifted, but they work hard, they turn the ball over, and they're nitty and gritty, and they get to a semi-finals of Euros when they had no right to get there. And Højbjerg was a massive part of it.
And he created the third most chances, I believe, in that tournament. It can't be. And again, the narrative, he can't be that bad. He can't be that bad at passing if he created the third most chances in Europe. You
don't go to Real Madrid if you can't pass a ball or you can't trap a ball. You don't end up at Real Madrid, or Real Madrid don't even get linked with you. Simple.
Yeah, they wouldn't even allow that. They'd probably sue you if you made that sort of, link. It just shows again, I think there's an agenda. I hate to admit it. There's an agenda against Højbjerg. And, I think you're welcome to not like Højbjerg. You're totally welcome for him not to be your favorite player. But there are times when I just think it's unfair criticism. And probably the biggest one is that Højbjerg can't pass. And I just find that one just to, just be over the top. But Dave, this was the Irish Hotspurs podcast of Tottenham Weekly. Kind of your thoughts on this, because these are kind of conversations that we sort of would basically have over the phone. I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, emphasis on weekly. We're going to be doing this once a week. We're going to be clipping it up, putting it out on YouTube, and it's going to be on various podcast platforms as well. Everybody do share it, do like it, and do show some support for this channel as well if you have enjoyed. But Dave, any kind of concluding thoughts on this?
Yeah, stop ridiculing players that have turned up for Tottenham, whether it's been here for 2 years or 3 years like Højbjerg, or whether it's been here 7 years like Son, or whether it's been here 8 years like Harry Kane. You look at Harry Kane compared to Ben Davies and Dyer, what they've done here in 8 years, Harry Kane has accomplished a hell of a lot more. So look, stop putting down the players that don't deserve it, that turn up week in, week out. Like example, Højbjerg, people ridiculed him, scapegoated him half-time, man the match for Chelsea, and man the match for Wolves as well come the end of the game. So just stop putting down players that actually do a job for Tottenham and start looking at the players who have been scapegoated and taking their paycheck, even though they've always been on the periphery, and stop putting out stats that try and make them look good, please.
Everybody, we will be seeing you. Everybody as well. Do suggest any topics, or anything that you feel like, we could change about this. But again, this is a new edition on the Irish Hotspur, and this is our podcast, Tottenham Weekly. Feel free to search it as well. But as always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
And in Conte we trust. We will be seeing you.